I guess people will know of Barry Letts, a Doctor Who producer that worked with John Pertwee and Tom Baker, and you played Barry Letts' son.
I did.
In a TV production.
I did.
Many years before either of your Doctor Who connections came about, I guess.
He was quite a famous actor. He wasn't, I mean, he wasn't a huge star, but he was quite a well-known actor, and certainly in television. He and another director called Hugh David, they both competed for the same kind of work, and they were both quite well known. Patrick Sharp was another one. He was, when he did Doctor Who, he became hugely famous throughout the world. But before that, he wasn't famous throughout the world, but he was quite well known as a jobbing actor who did lots of great work in television. And Barry was one of those. He did a lot of theatre, but he did lots of television work. And I worked on a production called The Silver Sword, which was set in the Second World War in Poland. And I played the young boy of a family whose father and mother had gone to Switzerland, and somehow the kids they'd been rushed away. They'd been separated. The kids were left in Poland in the ghetto, whilst the father and mother had been whisked away to Switzerland to freedom, hoping that their children somehow would escape and get to Switzerland. And he played my father, absolutely. Yeah.
And when did your paths cross again then in Doctor Who circles?
They didn't cross. Well, they did. I met him and worked with him when he was I worked with him on I was the first assistant director eventually to be. And the first assistant is the right-hand man of the director. He's stuck at the BBC, just stuck between loyalty to the director and trying to make everything work in planning and organising, getting all the equipment, and working out the schedule day to day of how you're going to shoot every scene that you're required to do, and how to work out all the complexities of it. So it's a great learning curve to be a director, because you really have to know how long it's going to take to do a certain scene, and then you've got to rely on the director being the same as you're doing in your kind of time frame. And I worked on a show called The Children of the New Forest, which I know you all know is a famous novel, and the director of it signed on to do this. There's a point to this, but he signed on to do what? Where we go? He signed on to make this series, 6-part serial of Sunday Afternoon. We did great Sunday Afternoon classic series. We should never do anymore. Brilliant stories, and this was one of them. And the director had signed on to do it as a multi-camera outside broadcast, so you had 4 or 5 cameras go on location all over these great kind of the 16th century houses in 16th century London to do Children of the New Forest. And he obviously hated multi-camera and wanted to do it on film, and thought, well, the quickest way for me to get through this series was to do it on film. And he decided to do it on video. I mean, that was the deal, and he had a certain amount of time to make it. So halfway through the series, shooting it, this guy decided to walk, because he'd had enough. He had a big row with Barry Letts. He insisted it had to be shot on film, and Barry said, but we're already committed, we've got all this equipment now, I can't just suddenly stop and do it on film. And anyway, to do it on film would take another 4 weeks. They didn't have the money for that. So the guy agreed he was going to go, and Barry took over. So I now worked with the master, because Barry Letts was an absolutely brilliant director in his own right. And do you know what? We were like 4 or 5 days behind when this bloke walked, because he slowed the thing down in order to prove a point. Barry Letts took it over, and we finished a week early. That's how good he was, because he was good. It wasn't just, oh, we've got to get through it. It was rubbish. It was absolutely brilliant. And he finished it not only on time but early. And I was his first now. I'd taken over. Now, of course, because I had the schedule in my head and planned the whole thing, although the other guy had gone, I was able to be a huge help to Barry, because I knew where all the buttons were going, if you know what I mean. I knew how to get us where we needed to be, and was able to help him and guide him through that way. So I wouldn't say we ended up close friends. I didn't eat with him and drink with him and go to his house and suddenly become buddy-buddy, but he had a huge regard, and I now realise when he died that he had a huge respect for me, which I didn't really know. I discovered it as I went along.
Can I ask you about another, I guess sort of slightly troubled production as well that I think you worked on, which is the Doctor Who story Warrior's Gate, which I watched again this week. Which everyone knows Warrior's Gate, Tom Baker story, this kind of very strange studio-bound story with lots of bright white scenery. How did you get involved with that? It's a long story.
I'll try and make it short. She made up things to do. Well, I was booked. I was a member of staff at BBC as a first, and I was booked to do this Doctor Who. I mean, there was no kind of all got at him. It was my turn to do a Doctor Who, and I had to do this.
Was it a rota like that then?
I think it was. I mean, I got on very well with John Nathan Turner, who was a colleague. We were doing the same jobs and coming up. But it took me quite a couple of years still to become a director. He was a producer, although we were the same age. He was flamboyant and brilliant. He was a wonderful producer, and he got there very quickly. So he was a producer, and we got on. So he knew he wanted me to come and do this, but I wasn't. But I was one of several he could have had. It just happened to be that it wasn't somebody else; it was me. So he said to me, "Look, this guy that's coming in hasn't done very much, but he's just made a play that he wrote in Birmingham for television, and it's rather good." And I think the BBC got high hopes for this character. So I joined this programme, knowing that the man might be a little green in areas that I would be very helpful to and useful. And I never told anybody when I was working with other directors. I never tried to do their job. I had a big enough job of my own first. I didn't dream of being a director so much that I would get in the way of them. I wanted to make their work shine. I wanted to give them whatever they dreamt of having and give them the space and time to do it. So here I was working with this character. Who I don't really want to say his name, but his name was Paul Joyce. And what happened was to do a Doctor Who, you have in those days 4 or 5 weeks preparation, and then it was a week for 2 episodes. Now the week consisted of a little bit of filming you'd have done pre-production or post-production. So we had a tiny bit of filming, but not very much. I seem to remember we went somewhere and did something. And he took lots of photographs, because he was a stills photographer as well, which were of this strange house that was the basis of how you got through to wherever we were going in the story. To do a Doctor Who in those days, which was multi-camera, so you went to the studio, you rehearsed scenes, and then you played those scenes, and 5 cameras were cut between by a vision mixer in the gallery, so most of your programme was maybe then tidy up in an editing suite later, but so you did 5 days of rehearsal, straight into the studio for 2 days, in which you rehearsed in those days all day, and then in the evening from 7:30 to 10 you shot. And I think this was the first time we did what they call rehearse record, which was you worked in the studio from 10:30 onwards till 10 o'clock at night. You rehearsed the scene, shot it, rehearsed the scene, shot it, but multi-camera. And what happened was, as we were planning, I said to him on Monday morning of the rehearsal rooms for 5 days rehearsal, I need your camera plan and your camera script. And he said, well, I've done that. I said, but I asked you, you have to do it. I need a camera plan and a camera script. And what you do is, you have a big camera plan of the studio, 50:1 camera plan. And you work, and as a director, with pennies or with special, or shape of a camera, a circle, and bits of string from where they connect from the walls, because there are different sockets. You could work out where those 5 cameras should be at any one time, and you had to work out very carefully. You couldn't suddenly take camera 1 up there and go to a set down there, and then suddenly do that, because by the time you finish, you did that 4 times, all your cables would be in a terrible knot. So you had to work it out very carefully, and the director would do that. But he hasn't got time to think all that out. But you think, but he has a clue, and then you as a first get the plan, and while they're rehearsing all day, you're going through it. What's he thinking? What's he thinking? And you change all the cameras, but you get all the shots are planned, but the cameras would be different numbers. And then his camera plan, his camera script would be that would have all the cameras in the right order with all the numbers, and everything would be. And he did. All he had to worry about was it worked, and that's what happened. Well, he didn't do that. And his best friend was a very famous director whose name's gone right in my brain, who did operas and Shakespeare, and he had 12 weeks of rehearsal, and he also had 6 days to shoot something, whereas we only had 2 days, but he'd have 6 days for 1 episode. And he said, well, my friend doesn't do that. What he does is he walks around and shows the first assistant and the PA, who's the woman who types the camera script up and works it all up with them first. They walk round with this guy while he says, I'm going to do something here, and they would write down. Well, we didn't have time to do that. I mean, and that's exactly what happened. he wouldn't do what I asked because he felt that was not necessary. His job was to create, and somebody else was to plan how to do it, how to shoot it. Not how to shoot it, but how to write it all up. So I worked with him all day, looked at his, not his career, everything. I worked with him and sat in the rehearsal and watched all the actors being told where he dreamt they should be. And then at night I would go home with the camera script and his plan, which had nothing on it, and I worked out how to shoot it. And that's what happened. Now that's the truth. What he did was he directed actors brilliantly, and he directed the shape of it. What I did was put the shots on how to shoot it, and it would be a group shot coming, so it would be a full shot, people coming through a door, and then all the cylinders, all the close-ups, and put the movement and shape to it. So I was a sort of technical director, but I was also his first. By the time I got into the studio, the point is, I was doing two jobs now. I was doing the first, and I was now a semi-director in the evenings. So 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, right now, you bloody I then went into the studio, absolutely on my knees, and tried to get the energy then to drive the show in order to get him exactly what he wanted. And in the end, we got it done, but it was a nightmare. And what happened was, he turned out to be this great classic kind of doctor, done very well. But I have to tell you the truth, and the truth is, all I did was I technically put the shots on it. I didn't direct any of the actors, I didn't ask them how to play it, I didn't tell them any of that, it's none of my business. But I planned how to shoot it, to give him, with his discussion with him, but he didn't describe, he described the sort of shape of what he wanted. He didn't describe, right, I want to omit 2 shots that come in. There's a system, there's a way of shooting, there's names, there's an ABC, that's what, a language of how you create and describe shots that everybody understands, and he didn't seem to use that, but I did, so, because I was brought up to know how to do that. He directed the actors, the storytelling was his, and the visuals of that storytelling I did. Whether he tells you differently, that's the truth. And now we come back to Barry Letts. Yeah. Barry Letts was the executive producer. John Nathan Turner had just started producing and was in a terrible state about this situation because we were so behind every day. And I think he sacked the bloke twice and said to me at one time, listen, you'll come out here, Sunshine, you direct it, and I'll